Europe is battling a massive migrant crisis. Hundreds of migrants in Belarus descended on its border with Poland, forcing their way into the country. Footage on social media showed hundreds of migrants walking towards the Polish border. Poland sent thousands of soldiers to the border area, enforced a state of emergency in the region with a complete media blackout. It built a razor wire fence and approved the construction of a wall as well. However, the migrants remained undeterred and were seen cutting razor wires using branches to try and climb over the fences. An armed Polish officer was also seen using a chemical spray through the fence in a bid to stop them.
Słuchajcie, jak przejdą tą centrynę i dojdą do tego płotu, podsuwamy.
We don't have water, don't have food. How many time we waiting? I don't know. We don't know how many time waiting.
Accusing Belarus of trying to spark a major confrontation, Poland's Interior Ministry said that it had rebuffed the illegal invasion and claimed the situation was under control. Polish government spokesperson said that currently there were about 3,000 to 4,000 migrants near the border. More than 10,000 others across Belarus are all ready to try and cross on into Poland, and Warsaw said it is warned actually that thousands more are on the way and future attempts to breach its frontier could be armed in nature.
W tej chwili polskich granic strzeże kilkanaście tysięcy, bezpośrednio polskich granic strzeże kilkanaście tysięcy funkcjonariuszy Straży Granicznej, polskiego wojska oraz policji. My będziemy w najbliższym czasie również wzmacniać te siły, w szczególności w tych miejscach, które są narażone najbardziej na ataki ze strony osób, które w sposób nielegalny próbują przekroczyć polską granicę. Więc my się spodziewamy, że na polskiej granicy może w najbliższym czasie dojść do eskalacji tego typu działań, które będą miały charakter zbrojny i bardzo tego się obawiamy. Jednocześnie o tym informujemy, ponieważ takie zachowania, takie prowokacje ze strony białoruskiej mogą się pojawić.
And for more on this, Stuart Smith is joining us live from Moscow. Thank you for joining us, Stuart. Now, what can you tell us about the situation on ground currently?
Yeah, this morning it is calm, but the migrants who are trying to get to Poland are waiting right next to the border fence on the Belarus side. You can see campfires, temperatures dropped once again to below 0 degrees. These are people from the Middle East, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, not used to such temperatures, trying to stay warm. There's a humanitarian crisis going on there, as well as a geopolitical crisis, because these refugees, a lot of them were not expecting to have to survive in the woods in a foreign cold climate, and NGOs who are desperate to get into the area to help refugees have been prevented. Now, these migrants are waiting for another attempt at crossing. There are reports from journalists that these migrants cannot get back to the Belarus side, many of them stuck in sort of no man's land between Belarus, not allowed back, and not able to get over to Poland, where border guards await them. Tear gas, as you said, on Monday, and razor wire fence. In fact, we also saw yesterday helicopters using their downdraft to try and push migrants back away from the fence. Poland very keen that nobody gets through. It's not been accepting asylum cases for a while now, which is why when these migrants approached the border, they were directed by the Belarusian security forces into a forest to find an alternative route rather than going through the main checkpoint.
Right, Stuart. Also, the European Union has accused strongman Alexander Lukashenko of facilitating this wave of migrants and refugees. How do you assess that?
That's right. So the European Union says this has come in response to the sanctions the EU has put against Belarus for human rights violations. And Belarus says it's not trying to help migrants get to the border, but there are reports from journalists that the Belarus embassies in the Middle East are issuing visas to get migrants to Belarus, promising them a way to get into the EU, and then directing them to the border to put pressure on the EU to revoke these sanctions, or at least not add more sanctions. Belarus has few options to counter what the European Union's doing in terms of sanctions, and this is one pressure point, allegedly, that Lukashenko can use. But he denies both the human rights allegations and also that Belarus is using migrants as a political tool.
Right. Also, now the EU is looking at how to sanction third country airlines that bring migrants to Belarus. What do you make of that?
That's right. European Commissioner Ursula von der Leyen has said that airlines that facilitate taking migrants from the Middle East to Minsk in Belarus are effectively partaking in human trafficking. And we do know that next week the EU is looking again at sanctions against Belarus, and they could be part of a programme of sanctions to try and stop this activity. Germany says that the European Union needs to help Poland and Germany to try and prevent this. It's a European-wide issue. It's the frontier of the European Union's border. It's not just Poland's border, says Germany, and the EU needs to do something. But so far from the EU, we've only heard statements and threats of sanctions. What the EU does not want is to turn into a violent conflict at the border, but we already saw on Monday migrants using logs and wire cutters to try and get through. So it is a volatile situation, potentially, if this isn't addressed.
Right, Stuart, thank you so much for joining us with all your inputs on that. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.